A war in the Middle East threatening world hunger, drone strikes on Moscow, and two superpowers leaving Beijing with very different stories. This is NovaBrief. I'm Mason. Let's go. We start with the story that is reshaping the entire world order. Since February 28th of this year, the United States and Israel have been at war with Iran. The operation, codenamed Epic Fury, began with a stunning surprise. US and Israeli airstrikes killing Iran's supreme leader Ali Khamenei and dozens of senior officials in a single night. Iran's response was immediate and devastating. Hundreds of ballistic missiles and thousands of drones fired across the Middle East. Dubai's airport was struck, flights across the region grounded. And then, Iran did something no one had done before. It closed the Strait of Hormuz. That narrow passage handles roughly 20% of all oil traded on Earth. Gone. Global oil prices exploded, shipping routes were redrawn overnight, and now, the UN is warning that if fertilizer shipments aren't allowed through within weeks, 45 million more people could face starvation. A ceasefire brokered by Pakistan came into force in April, but it's barely holding. Trump himself called it on massive life support. Iran rejected the US terms, which demanded it scrap its nuclear program, open Hormuz, and limit its missiles. Iran's counteroffer? The US must recognize Iran's sovereignty over the Strait of Hormuz. Trump called that totally unacceptable. Enter Beijing. Trump flew to China hoping Xi Jinping would pressure Tehran to fold. Xi said China wants to help. But analysts say Beijing is walking a tightrope. It buys more Iranian oil than anyone. Pushing Tehran too hard risks its own energy security. The bottom line tonight: the ceasefire exists on paper. The strait remains effectively closed, and the world is holding its breath. Now to Europe, where a war many thought was nearing its end just dramatically escalated again. Last week, Russia launched its single largest aerial assault on Ukraine since the war began. Over 1,500 drones in 48 hours. Apartment buildings in Kyiv destroyed. At least 25 civilians killed, including 2 young girls. Ukraine's answer came this weekend. Over 500 Ukrainian drones hit Russian territory, the biggest drone strike on Moscow in over a year. Houses burned near the capital. Debris fell on the grounds of Sheremetyevo Airport, Russia's busiest. President Zelensky called the strikes, quote, entirely justified. This comes after a 3-day ceasefire, brokered by Donald Trump around Russia's Victory Day on May 9th, collapsed almost immediately. Putin had signaled the war was coming to an end and even offered to meet Zelensky in a neutral country. But here's the catch. Putin says he'll only meet after a peace deal is already agreed. Zelensky says he won't surrender Ukrainian territory. Russia demands Kyiv withdraw from Donbass regions that Russian forces haven't even captured yet. Trump's envoys are shuttling between Washington, Kyiv, and Moscow. Europe is growing impatient, with Finland's president now saying, quote, it's time to start talking to Russia. The war has now lasted longer than the Soviet Union fought in World War II. And tonight, the drones are still flying. And finally, the summit the world was watching. Donald Trump in Beijing for 2 days with China's Xi Jinping. He brought with him the CEOs of Apple, Tesla, Boeing, BlackRock, and Nvidia, a who's who of American capitalism. The agenda: trade deals, Iran, Taiwan, and the global order itself. Washington came out claiming victory: Boeing aircraft deals, fentanyl agreements, progress on Iran. Beijing's readout? Almost none of that appeared. China warned the US on Taiwan, called the Iran war something that should never have started. The two sides can't even agree on what they agreed on. What's clear: Trump needs China to help reopen Hormuz, lower oil prices, and deliver something before US midterm elections 6 months away. Xi needs trade stability, but not at the cost of alienating Iran or looking like America's partner in a Middle East war. This is the world's 2 most powerful nations, negotiating the fate of a war neither of them started, over a strait neither of them controls, while 45 million people count down to a food crisis. That is the world in May 2026. 3 wars, 2 superpowers, 1 fragile planet. That's your NovaBrief briefing for Monday, May 18th, 2026. If the world matters to you, this channel is for you. Subscribe, share it, because the people who understand what's happening are the ones who shape what comes next. See you tomorrow.